their lives continue.
Their lives continued. And so you're in bed and all you do is have time to think. So you're thinking about your nieces that you haven't seen, or you're wondering how, your friend is doing. But that's all you have time for. But when I was working, I didn't have time to think about everyone else's life the way that I do now. But when I'm in bed, I'm thinking, well, why aren't they thinking about me? Why is
or
no
you
one
feel like they're not
me?
thinking about
Exactly.
you.
And why is no one checked up on me? Why? And so it's really easy to get in a rut, or to have a pity party, or feel sorry for yourself, or feel like no one cares, or no one matters, or that you don't matter. But you have to remember, or it just took me a long time to come to terms to be like, you know what? It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't love me. It's the fact that they're still working a full-time job. They're still going home and cooking dinner and cooking or cleaning and doing all of this stuff. They have a busy life. So although I have all of this time to now think and dwell and to analyze and to all of that stuff, that's actually not something that a lot of people have. And it's kind of a gift, because I have come to a realization in terms with things that I never would have come to if I didn't have this.
Well, and certainly not something you would have chosen, but you've gotten a lot more comfortable with your alone time, and maybe even crave it on some level at times. Like if something happened and you didn't have any of that, there's a part of you that's shifted now where you're like, okay, I need to go have my space for a little bit. But
absolutely, because things are too much for me. I used to be, I'm still loud, but
thank goodness.
But now, even when I go to a restaurant, and if the music is over me, I can't handle it. Or I'm much more sensitive to things. I love my family and friends, but I can't handle crowds anymore.
No.
I'm just used to being by myself to the point, and that was so difficult for me. But now that I'm there, I crave it.
Yes.
And it was something that changed in me, that I no longer need people around me all the time, that I'm okay by myself. It's going to be okay. And I don't know. Although lupus has taken away so much, it's also given so much. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and a lot of things to appreciate that you wouldn't, or that I wouldn't appreciate it otherwise.
So, I think also there is a almost like this. Okay, so I told you I just flew in, and I'm used to being in a culture that is pretty quiet. They value quiet. It doesn't get loud. It doesn't get. Speaking of loud.
Yeah, sorry about my dog.
We've got a very big dog.
He failed school obedience training. So.
So I just fly in, and I haven't been in America for any length of time for over a year, and really longer than that. So what I did was went to a restaurant with my mom and my daughter, and we were there, and I left an anxious mess. And there was nothing major going on. It was music, and it was a crowd. And some of that's COVID related, because where I live, it's very strict. And we were only just recently, after 18 months, able to go and eat in a restaurant. But just that, being used to quiet, I'm used to, and to come into the environment with the restaurants and the music and I was a mess. That was a cultural difference. But what you're saying is, you have your space. You are alone. You control your environment as much as you can, and you've kind of adapted to that. And I think that's a sense of peace.
It is, because now I have to like you more than I like myself in order to give up that time.
Well, I think they call that healthy.
That doesn't happen very often.
That's what shifted, Kari, is that you like you a lot more now.
I'm just used to me now. I have been through the ringer, and when you're alone, and you're alone enough to sit in your own crap and simmer and then to be like, you know what, I got to come to terms with this because no one's coming to save me and it's not changing. It's not, I mean, this is my new reality. And for me, whenever I first got sick, I still had that, whatever, can't touch me attitude type thing where I thought, man, I got this. I ain't worried. I'm going to beat it.
Yep.
Hell, I'm going to write a book on it and save others, And then everybody, and I know people want to try to bond with you over it, but people say the stupidest stuff or,
Yep.
my aunt has it and she died from it. Or I have a friend that has a sister's mom and she has lupus and she's fine and she jogs 10 miles a day. And
so
then,
it's like the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, and so then you're like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Or if you do this, you're going to be cured. And everybody sells you vitamins and all, and so I've spent so much money on trying. And now I finally came to terms where I'm like, you know what? Lo and behold, I am not smarter than the Lupus Research Committee. And so it doesn't look like I'm going to be writing a book and saving.
We're going to donate money to them. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So you got to come to terms with you're probably not, if there was a cure, somebody probably would have found it. Or you'll hear about it as soon as they do. But it's not on my shoulders. I don't,
And you're not doing anything wrong. And you aren't a bad human for this happening to you.
It wasn't something that I did. And I even had a nurse, well, how did you catch it? And I'm like,
oh,
really?
Lord.
Or there's so many things. If you, if you were just more positive, or if you change your diet, or you need to exercise more, you need to, there's all kinds of advice. And yes. I felt that too. So I can't judge others because, like I said, when I first got sick, I really thought, shoot, I'll have this down and, give me 2 weeks. I got this beat. And I never in a million years, I spent 12 years working full time and going to school and getting my master's. So I never in a million years thought that I would be sick at 36 where I couldn't work. And the one thing I can say is I hope everyone gets long-term and short-term disability with their job because you never know. I never in a million years thought that this would happen to me.
This is worth the podcast right there. Short-term and long-term disability, guys. If you have the opportunity, get it.
Yeah.
Not to be negative, but it doesn't hurt to have that support in case you need it.
I can tell you right now, it would be a whole other situation because I was in higher ed. I am fortunate enough where I was able to have insurance for the rest of my life on that. But without, I paid long-term disability, and it's like $6 a month or something. And I think the short-term was covered by my employer, but I was fully expected to go back to work. And I went back to work, and I think I made it 3 days. And then my doctor said, you don't have a choice, you can't work. And I was like, you're funny. And she's like, no,
that's not going to happen.
It's going to kill you if you don't stop. And I was like, oh. Well, I was not expecting that. And so...
And the grief process. You were grieving so many different things.
Yeah. But without the law, I know so many people who didn't have that option and who can't get insurance and who can't get disability or can't, they're fighting for disability, but you can't get it approved hardly unless you have a lawyer. Well, you can't afford a lawyer because you can't work. There are so many people that I know that are in these shoes that have it so much worse than I do. And so I have to be thankful and I have to be grateful every day for the things that I do have. And I appreciate all of it. It doesn't go unnoticed to me. I just need the word out for the other people too, that even when everything seems to be going right, it's still really hard.
And you have a right to be angry, to be hurt, to be sad, and to feel victimized sometimes. You have a right to do that. You don't have to stay in a constant state of gratitude. You do have awareness and you do get grateful, but you're also human and you've been through HE double toothpicks.
And the medicine, I can tell you the medicine, sometimes it's really hard to know what's worse, the disease or the medication, because I've had medicine that I didn't know, because I was, during that time, you don't know what it's doing to you mentally, you know, until you start thinking clearly.
Absolutely, you don't.
And so there's been times where I've been suicidal. Now, thankfully, I've never tried or attempted, but I would just cry. And
the feeling's
like,
bad enough.
To be like, God, please just let me die, for heaven's sake. Like, dying would be so much easier. And, or, you know, almost paranoid. People are talking about me. They don't believe me. They, you know, they think I'm faking it there. You know, or just any kind of paranoia. I've had so much depression, anxiety, everything that comes along with it.
Well, just from a purely psychological perspective, when you take, I think you're the same Myers-Briggs as I am, which is ESFJ. And that is, you know, like extreme, extra, the most sensitive of the 16 types is an ESFJ. If you take us and all of a sudden we have too much alone time, we're thrown into that, then we can go into our dark side. And our dark side is the paranoia. It's the negative thing. All of it. We go in. Everybody has their dark, but our dark is going into that place that you're talking about. And that's if nothing else is involved. No pain, no medication effect, any of that. Mm-hmm. So yes, that happens. Just from you all of a sudden being, quote unquote, pushed out of your life, your normal, in a place of having to prove, in pain. I mean, there's so much that was going on there.
Feeling guilty that you can no longer be the person you once were, or you can't. Like when we went on vacation and my husband loves to hike, and there was this beautiful waterfall, I think a mile up or whatever, and I'm very stubborn. I know it's a shocker. And so he's like, no, you know, you just stay. And I'm like, no, I'm doing it, you know. And so it took me way too long. Well, by the time I get there, I'm crying. I can hardly make it back. So he feels bad. Well, I'm mad because my body can't do it, but yet I'm taking it out on him. It's just a whole vicious cycle where you don't realize all the little things that it affects and all of the people that it affects until it happens to you. And that's pretty much the same, I guess, with all things. You don't know until you know.
Right. And you know what? The you don't know till you know are my best podcast guests. And it's really selfless of you to come and share this very painful, harrowing story that you've lived for the last 8 years. I know there's people out there listening that would want to connect to you. Are you open to that for like any questions as we wrap up the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Because surprisingly, there's so much more, and this only touched, some of it. So if anybody has any questions, and a lot of the support that you'll receive is through maybe podcasts or online or other things. Mm-hmm. Very rarely is the most support from people that you think. And
it's the accidental support and the unsuspecting support that's out there. Is there anything that you can think of that you would either want people to know, which you've kind of been sharing that, or what they can do to make a difference if they know someone with autoimmune, with chronic illness, with lupus?
What I wish people knew is don't be too quick to judge. Don't offer cures, because it only makes us feel worse that it doesn't work once we try it. Reach out. It only takes 10 seconds to throw a text saying, hey, I love you and I'm thinking about you. Don't make someone feel guilty if they have to cancel. It's just better because they're already beating themselves up that they can't do it. So it's better if you just don't make plans. Just say, hey, I'm going to come over and hang out. And if you feel good, then we'll go somewhere. If not, I'll watch a movie with you.
I think that's a good idea for everybody in your life.
Yeah, and it's good too whenever, I think this is good boundaries for everybody, but when you call, do you have the energy for this right now?
I like that.
Can I talk to you about this? Or
Like when I
where's
messaged
your
you this
energy
morning,
level?
I wanted to make sure it was likely you might not have felt